This lecture is made possible by the Reginald and Elizabeth Lene Lectureship in Business and Economics, a fund held by the Chautauqua Foundation. The imprint of Reg and Betty Lene is all over these grounds, as it is in the larger Chautauqua County community. They provided funding for Lene Hall on the north end of the grounds and for the Main Gate Welcome Center. They established several endowments, one of which underwrites today's lecture. We thank them posthumously, and we welcome the directors of the Lene Foundation to the audience today and thank them for their support of this new amphitheater and the Chautauqua Fund. And additionally, I want to thank all of you who so generously support Chautauqua. Our speaker this morning is Lisa Seacat DeLuca, the most prolific female inventor in IBM history. Lisa holds 70 United States patents with over 300 pending applications. She has been named an IBM Master Inventor for over 2 consecutive 3-year terms, starting in 2009, and she is the first and only woman to reach the prestigious 100th Plateau achievement at IBM. In 2014, she was named one of Network World's 50 most fascinating people in the world of technology, and this past May, she was inducted into the Women in Technology Hall of Fame. She currently serves as a technology strategist in the Cognitive Incubation Lab for IBM Watson Customer Engagement. Ms. DeLuca will also be reading from her children's books, believe it or not, A Robot Story and the Internet of Mysterious Things at Children's School tomorrow morning. She'll be signing copies of these books at 12:15 tomorrow at the Author's Alcove, located adjacent to the bookstore on Bester Plaza, where these books are available. This, as you see, is quite a talented woman. Ms. DeLuca received her bachelor's degree from Carnegie Mellon University and earned a master's in science from the University of Texas at Austin, McCombs School of Business. She is accompanied on this first visit to Chautauqua by her husband, Steve, and I would ask you to please join me in welcoming Lisa DeLuca to the amphitheater this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Well, I grew up in Montana, and anytime anyone asks me how I got started inventing, I always give credit to Montana. That curiosity and creative thinking I learned from my childhood in Montana. My parents used to unleash my older brother, younger sister, and I in the backyard, and we had to use our own imaginations to bring our toys to life and dream about what the future might look like. So today, when I was asked to come to speak to you all, I went on the website and looked up Chautauqua, and I recognized a lot of the outdoor activities and what you all stand for. And I thought it'd be really fun today to give you a perspective of what it's like to be an inventor. So I know this week is all about invention. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek into my mind and what it's like to be an inventor. So today, I'm going to compare inventing to fly fishing. A lot of times when people hear how many patents I have, which is actually closer to 600, but when they hear that number, they assume that that's my day job, that that's all I do is that I'm an inventor. But it's not. It's just like fly fishing. It's more of a hobby. It's something that I'm doing on my nights and weekends. My day job, I am a software engineer, and I'm writing code. But just like fly fishing, it's a great way for me to escape, for me to be somebody else, to dream about what the future might look like, and imagine that future being there right now. It's also a time for me to escape from what my normal day-to-day job is like and enjoy some peace and quiet. But just like fly fishing, being an inventor takes some skill. If you ever seen an experienced fly fisherman, it's almost like watching art. The way that they cast, it's like a snake in the air, the S that they make. A simple twist of their wrist, and all of a sudden they're casting in one direction. It's really beautiful. And a lot of inventing is that way. As you do it, the more you recognize the little things that can make you successful. But at the same time, one of my favorite things about inventing is it doesn't matter if you've been at the company for 20 days or 20 years. The only thing that matters is your idea. And all of those ideas, there's no biases about who you are. That idea has to stand on its own. It's the same with fishing. Everyone has access to the same river and the equal opportunity to get that big fish. But at the same time, it's important to be prepared. One of the first times that I went fishing, it was actually after I graduated from college. And my sister and my brother and I and my dad, we all went fishing. And my brother said to my sister and I, go find some bugs. We're like, okay, he's just trying to get us out of the way, right? So my sister and I were walking across the river, and we start grabbing bugs and collecting these bugs. And we bring them back to my brother. And he takes one of the bugs, and he compares it against his tackle box of all the flies that he had tied. And sure enough, the bugs that we found were almost identical to some of the flies that he had tied. So he picked those flies and tied it to the end of the line. He said that day, that was the bug that the fish were biting at. So if it were me starting out, I would have grabbed like the hot pink fly with the feathers on it. I would have been really excited about what that fly looked like, not realizing that comparing the bug to the fly was an opportunity for success. So a lot of invention is like that. It's very rare for people to come up with new ideas out of nowhere. A lot of times we're building off of existing technologies. When my husband and I were living in San Francisco, which is an amazing city, we had so many friends and family that would come to visit. And the first question they would always ask was, "What's your Wi-Fi password?" And it was kind of annoying because we had like this 16-character password, and we wrote it down so we'd have to give it to people. But I thought, like, why not combine that with existing technologies like social networks? Wouldn't it be really neat if you could log into someone's Wi-Fi network, and then as you're logging in with your social network, it would compare your relationship. So if you're first-degree friends, it would let you on to the network. But if you were second-degree friends, it might give you limited bandwidth. Those existing technologies already exist on their own, and it's that combination that makes an invention. So that first slide I showed of the fly fisherman fishing alone, it's one of my favorite things about inventing is having that quiet space and alone time. But at the same time, it makes a big difference when you have other people to help you out. This is my brother, and he's got a friend helping him in the raft. He's able to go places that he wouldn't have been able to go if he were fishing alone. There's only so far you can wade in the water. But here, with his friend, he's able to take the raft into different locations of the river so that my brother can fish off the side. Of my 600 inventions, I'd say less than 10% of them are alone. Sometimes I'll have that crazy idea in the middle of the night where I'll wake up and I'm like, I gotta write this right now and submit it. But most of the time, I take my ideas and I share it with other people. And as we're talking about the ideas that I've come up with, we feed off of each other, and they contribute ideas. And then that one invention becomes 5. But at the same time, you want to keep your groups kind of in the lower edge. If you get too many people fishing, for example, they're going to start talking. They're going to scare away the fish. They're going to not contribute. They're going to be sitting in the boat. Whereas if you have a smaller group of people, everybody is contributing, and everyone has something in it for the final outcome of fishing. And same with inventing. I tend to keep my groups to about 3 or 4 people, because that smaller group makes everybody accountable, and we're able to come up with new ideas where everyone has contributed. Not to mention the legal about you have to be contributing to invention to be listed as an inventor. So smaller groups really help. Another thing that I found in fishing and in inventing is that it's, in life in general, is it's really important to have a mentor. This is my father, and he, I said the first time I went fishing was after I graduated from college. But my dad taught me everything that I know. And the same with inventing. And I've always had somebody, whether it's different aspects of my career, that I can reach out to and talk to and ask about their experiences. And that's really helped me to be successful from learning from their mistakes. My dad took my husband and I fishing on the Masson River, and there was this area of the river that looked a lot like this. My dad told us to aim for that area after the water ran over the rocks. And it's something we never would have thought of on our own, but because he knew the river, he knew the environment, he knew where those fish tended to be. The same with inventing. A lot of times people find it hard to invent around areas that they work in their day-to-day lives because they're too close to it. They think it's obvious, those ideas they come up with. But the better you get at inventing, the more you do it, the more you recognize that inventing around the topics that you're familiar with are easier. So for example, I mentioned that I'm a software engineer at IBM in our Watson Customer Engagement Business Unit. So I'm doing a lot of customer-facing activities, retail, and commerce. And one of the products that I was working on had to do with microlocation. So indoor beacon, Bluetooth technology, figuring out how long people were in different parts of a venue. So I thought it'd be really fun to combine that with our marketing software to come up with some inventions. So one idea I had, it was around dynamically changing a push notification based on the area of the venue that you were standing in. So suppose you're a grocery store and you want to give someone $2 off. You don't really care what that $2 is off of, but you want to make it feel relevant and personalized to them. So when they're in the fruit and vegetable aisle, you might send them a push notification that says $2 off if you buy 2 packages of raspberries. But maybe that person doesn't pull their phone out of their pocket and they don't look at it. And they're walking around in the grocery store and go by the cereal aisle, and now they pull out their phone. If you show them the ad for the raspberries, it's not going to be relevant anymore because they're no longer in that section of the venue. So this invention was able to modify that push notification that someone has already received to change the wording to now say $2 off a box of Captain Crunch. A lot of times it's important to change your perspective. So looking at this view of a river, most fishermen don't actually see that kind of view. But when you do, you can see how the river bends and what might be coming up around the corner. The same with inventing. I always love to take an initial idea and apply it in a new space that you wouldn't think would make a lot of sense. New technologies like social media, mobile devices, big data and cloud computing. One of the good examples of this was I took a taxi advertisement. I was visiting Las Vegas, and I noticed that there were dynamic ads on the taxi cars. And as it's driving, it cycled through maybe 3 different advertisements. And I thought it'd be really neat if the ads were relevant to the people that are looking at the taxi. So if you're behind the taxi and there's a McDonald's in the distance, that ad, what you're seeing behind the taxi, should show the McDonald's. Whereas the people that are driving against the taxi, they might see an ad for the Burger King because that's behind them. But applying the direction and knowing where you're traveling compared to that other vehicle is something that you wouldn't think of because it's like advertisements and dynamic advertisements have been around forever. But just applying that new space of the location made it a unique idea. A lot of times in life we'll run into these bumps along the way. And for example, when I was floating the Smith River with my parents, it just rained and rained, and all of a sudden the water levels changed a bit. And it made it hard to know where the fish were going to be that we were fishing for before. But the same sort of thing happens with inventing all the time. Every day I'll run into a problem, and I like to take that as an opportunity for new ideas. One time I was visiting an IBM location in Canada. So I didn't have my cell phone turned on with the GPS because I didn't want to pull my data. And so I'm using the GPS that's in the vehicle itself. And I really didn't know where I was going, and I was kind of getting scared. So I thought, wouldn't it be really neat if the car could suggest points of interest based on what I had with me in the car? So maybe it would recognize I have my IBM badge. So it could say, oh, you might be going to this Markham location or this Toronto lab. It might notice that I have a room key. So it might suggest, here, come to this Hilton. Or it might even notice that I have a gym membership and show me the closest 24-hour fitness to where I'm traveling. And so sure enough, we did some prior art searching and didn't find it and submitted that invention idea, and it was issued. So as an inventor, you don't always catch the big fish, right? Sometimes you're feeding off of each other and you come up with all sorts of really great ideas, but a lot of times you don't come up with anything. I like to tell new inventors or even seasoned inventors that you don't need to stay talking and brainstorming if the ideas aren't flowing. Sometimes it's better just to take a break, think about what the ideas are, maybe come back a new day when the conditions have changed. So it's really important to value your time and figure out where you want to go with your ideas. But at the same time, one of the most frustrating similarities between fishing and inventing is that it takes time, right? So it might take a while for you to catch that fish. The same with inventing. It's a really slow process. And I like to say I'm an impatient, patient person. And that's probably why I'm so prolific with my inventing. With IBM, we have a process where when you come up with an invention idea, you have to fill out a short form and submit it through the invention process. And then we have teams called invention development teams. And they're the subject area experts who know a lot about one particular topic. So they're listening to your idea, and you're pitching it to them, trying to defend your idea. And if they like it, it's rated a search. Once you get the search rating, then you have to wait for a formal search to go off to see if your invention exists. And then you get a bunch of results back. Then it's up to the inventor to go through those results and see how your idea is different from what the searcher found. So that can take a couple months. And then if you can differentiate your idea, then you're assigned an attorney. So one of the nice things for me for being an inventor is I don't have to write up the whole invention myself. We have patent attorneys that can go and write them up for me. So again, that takes a couple months. You have to have phone calls with them, tell them about your invention ideas, and then they write it up and make sure that it agrees with what your original idea was. So then you sign away all your rights and sign your declaration and submit the idea through the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And then it can take up to 4 years or longer for your idea to go all the way through the process. So I think that's why I'm so prolific, is because I like to have ideas in all the different phases of the inventing pipeline so that I don't get so concerned about the fact it's not moving as fast as I wish it was. But once you do all this work, you might catch your first fish. So this is me catching my first fish, and as you can tell by the look on my face, I was super excited. I'm like squeezing this poor little fish. In fact, if you go back to the picture of my dad, watch how he's holding the fish. Not to mention it's a lot bigger than mine, right? But he's holding it out, he's barely touching it, he's being gentle with it. And that's one of the tricks he told me about being a fisherman or any wild game hunter. Typically, they'll hold it out in front of them. They'll show it off. And by holding it out in front of you, it makes your fish look bigger than it is. So here's me. I'm squeezing it really close to me, scared it's going to fly away or something. But I'll never forget that first fish, and I'll never forget my first invention either. I was with IBM for a few weeks, and I noticed that people had these patent awards hanging up in their office. I'm like, I want to do that. Like, I want to get a patent. So I started asking around about the process and how to go about getting started. And I'm like, all right, now I need an idea. I was a Java developer at the time, and I was writing code in the IDE, and I saw that whenever I wanted to see when my code was being executed, I'd do a system out message and do a bunch of stars. And every time the stars would come up, sure enough, that's when my code was being executed. So I noticed that the output console looked a lot like a web browser. So I thought, I should be able to style this. I should be able to change the color, the font size. I should be able to make it bigger. I should be able to add animated clip art. So that was my first idea. I was like, OK, I think this could be patentable. So I wrote it all up. I had it ready to go. And that's when I asked one of my mentors, who was a master inventor at IBM, for his advice. I said, this is my write-up. What do you think about my idea? And we talked about it back and forth. He came up with ideas to extend it. He pointed out a few things that I was doing wrong, and we went ahead and submitted that idea. Back then, the invention process at IBM was you had to pitch your idea in front of the review board. Now a lot of it's done over the phone. But I went into this little room, and there was like six men on the table, and my mentor was dialed into the phone call, and I pitched the idea, and I sold them on my idea of being able to style the output console. And they liked it. So that first idea was rated a search and eventually became filed and then issued as a US patent. But ever since that first idea, I was addicted. It was just so much fun. The whole process of coming up with ideas, defending it in front of people, doing the brainstorming with other individuals, I just loved it. And I'll never forget it. One of the fun things about inventing and fly fishing is you never know what you're going to get, right? You can cast your line, and you don't know if it's going to be a small fish or a big fish or no fish at all. It's the same thing with inventing. Once you start coming up with these ideas, you don't know where it's going to take you, what cool things you might come up with. But at the same time, it doesn't matter how experienced you are, you're going to run into some snags. I like to call it a challenge. So when I come up with a new idea, I always do what we call prior art searching. So I go to websites like DuckDuckGo, that's the recommended search engine, because it doesn't save your search history. And I'll go and I'll type in the key terms associated with my idea and start looking to see if it exists. And at first, when I was first inventing and I'd find something that was similar, I'd get pretty disappointed. But now I get really excited. It's an opportunity whenever I find my idea existing to come up with something new and to get around that prior art, twist the idea in a new way, and come up with something even stronger because you can prove that the prior art exists and it's a valuable area. As you can tell, I love a challenge. And I think it's important when new technologies come out to put yourself in that technology and figure out how to shape it into new ideas. Because that's the new space that other people have not been into before. And if you're willing to go somewhere that no one else is going before, there's more opportunity for you to come up with invention. One of my ideas with some coworkers related to cloud computing was about 4 years ago, and there was a big earthquake in Japan. And so we were reading the news, and we noticed that the people knew the earthquake was coming and were preparing for it from social media before the news stations even picked it up. So we thought, why don't we leverage those technologies for cloud computing? Wouldn't it be nice to use social media or weather to predict when there might be some big event and be able to take your data, cloud resources that are out in a data center somewhere that might be affected by those conditions and move them somewhere safe? So that was one of our inventions. So once you come up with the idea, that's the easy part. It's writing it up and defending it that can be more challenging. And just like with fishing, it's a little bit of a game, right? So if you if you get a bite on your line and you pull too hard, you're going to pull that hook out of the fish. Sorry. The same thing with inventing. It's a little bit of a game. You have to give a little and pull a little with the IDT as you're defending your idea. So it's a little bit, you get to become a salesperson and really push for your idea, which I love that aspect of it, to challenge people and explain your idea to them. But at the same time, it's also important to let some ideas go. Sometimes the idea just isn't big enough or not as valuable to your company as it should be, right? So I think being prolific really helps with this aspect of not worrying about people calling your baby ugly, right? So it's pretty easy to, it's okay to publish your idea. We call it, when it's not rated a search, it's rated a publish, in which case it's out for the public domain and people can freely use the idea. And one of the things I love about fishing and inventing is it's people that love what they're doing. This is a hobby. It's something that you're doing for fun. And it's really important to share that love with other people. This is a picture of my brother. But every time you fish, you're creating a story in your life. The same with inventing. Every new idea becomes a story that I can share with other people. It also makes me unique. As soon as someone hears that I'm an inventor, they have so many questions about what are my ideas and what have I been doing, what have I been up to. But being a master inventor wasn't enough for me at IBM. I wanted to know everything about the whole process. So I thought it'd be fun to file my own patents outside of IBM. So one day, my friend Tiffany and her husband Nate, they came to San Francisco where we were living, and he's one of those guys that likes to go to all the baseball stadiums across the United States. So they had some awesome seats to some games in San Francisco, and I went to visit them and got some seats in the nosebleeds. And I'm like texting her, all right, when am I going to sneak down to be close to you? And as I'm up there in the nosebleeds, I thought of a cool idea. I was like, wouldn't it be neat if you could have a ticket before the event where you could pay proportionally for how long you sit in different seats? Yeah. So everyone could experience that home plate seat. Maybe it's a $900 ticket. You're only there for an inning, so you're only paying $100. That ticket beforehand could have it pre-ticket out. So I got approval from IBM to go off and do this idea myself. And I wrote up all the claims, did the background, the description, everything myself, and submitted it through the patent process. And then I got a letter from the USPTO saying that it was a non-final rejection. So I was really disappointed because they didn't like my idea. But I realized that they do that for everybody. Every single invention is initially rejected. So I recreated my claims. I went back. I worked with the examiner. You were able to call them up on the phone. And I talked to the examiner, and we worked through what the problems were. And some of them were silly mistakes, like forgetting a period at the end of the claim. So I made those changes and resubmitted it through the process. And eventually, that patent I wrote up on my own without a lawyer got all the way through the process. So that's called being a pro se inventor, and it's a whole lot cheaper than using a lawyer. It's like $500 compared to $20,000. So I really encourage everybody to, pursue your ideas. Go do them and share them with other people. And part of that sharing is the next generation. So this is a picture of my nephew, West, my brother's son. He's probably 4 years old, and he's already learning to fish. And I have 4 little ones. We have 2 sets of twins. Yes, yeah. Our boys will be 5 in November, and our girls will be 2 in September. Yeah. Yes. So we're always trying to encourage them to learn new technologies and play with things, because it's all about getting your hands dirty and being exposed to new technologies in order to get you excited to know what the career is that you want to pursue someday. And that's probably why I wrote the 2 children's books. Is like the first one is How to Count to 10 in Binary. And yeah. But when I went to college, I didn't have binary memorized. So I'm there doing math in my head during all of the exams. And I thought it would be easier if I had it memorized from 0 to 10. So that's one of the reasons I was like, I'll do a Kickstarter. I'll self-publish this book, and then hopefully help other generations and people learn to count to 10 in binary. And then my second book is The Internet of Mysterious Things, which it's the first children's book ever to have NFC tags in the book. And NFC is near-field communication, but you can take your phone and tap it to these tags, and it'll pull up more information about the story. So the idea is that it's teaching you how these technologies work with these mysterious creatures being the underlying story. But the moral of the story is to look up from your devices, because we're missing out on life around us, and it's so important to go out and experience life. So I just wanted to give a special thanks to my brother. He started a company called Seacat Creative, so he's doing what he loves, all this outdoor stuff, taking pictures in all this cool gear. So most of these pictures I got from him. And now I'd like to open it up to any questions you all have.
So early on, thank you for that first. I think I wrote it down. You said something about no biases about who you are. And I'm sure certain members of the audience said, really? Young, creative female in the IBM culture and no biases about who you are. Would you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, your idea stands on its own. I serve as an evaluator on a lot of these boards, and really we don't look at the names of who's the inventor listed. It's really more about the idea, and it doesn't matter who you are. Anyone can come up with ideas, and that's one of the things that I love about it.
Talk a little bit about signing away your rights.
Yes.
I was saying, okay, I've just had this great idea, and then you use the phrase, you sign away all your rights.
Yep. Yeah, so like I said, I have about 300 patents that have issued so far, and they're all, except for 2, belong to IBM. So part of our employment agreement is we get some monetary bonus every time we file a patent. But IBM, if it makes millions of dollars, IBM gets millions of dollars. But there is an opportunity for those ideas that make a lot of money for you to get some other awards later on. So yeah, IBM gets all the rights.
Financial rewards or just, a pretty trophy?
Yeah, there's some financial rewards. Yep, we get a good little chunk of money.
So this has to come from a lawyer because he or she cites the U.S. code here in the question. I mean, 35 USC 101.
Yep.
That means anything to you? Yeah, okay. Doesn't to a lot of us. Do the patent laws need to be amended to cover your new technology inventions which are being denied because they are abstract ideas, even though they are novel and non-obvious?
Yeah, definitely a lawyer asked that question. The way it's written right now, it's okay, but there's a lot of people that are arguing for whether or not a software patent should be patentable. And I'm not a lawyer. As an inventor, I do a lot of my inventions related to software, so I hope we continue to allow software patents. But I think a lawyer could speak to that better than me.
How do you balance work and babies? Nanny?
Yes. We have an au pair. She's from Brazil, which is one of the best things that we've ever done. We used to have a nanny before the au pair, and that worked out okay, but whenever there was a snow day, our nanny didn't come. So having an au pair, she lives with us, so there's no excuse, and being able to work from home, I can still work when there's bad weather. And then we just have another set of hands. So she's not working when she has dinner with us, but she's able to, give someone a cup of milk or grab them a fork. So it's nice to have someone else around the house, and it's pretty amazing experience learning about her culture as well.
What advice do you have for an inventive who is not connected to a large business, has little money and social connection?
Yeah, well, make some friends, go on LinkedIn. For me, going off and writing the patent myself as a pro se inventor was one of the most valuable things I've ever done, just learning about that process firsthand. And anyone can go out and do it. You can go on Google Patents or online and read all these other patents, and you'll notice there's a form, there's a there's a pattern between all of them. And if you just read a few of them, you'll understand how that pattern works, and you should be able to write your own invention. As well as the examiners are really nice to pro se inventors. They're willing to help you. There's a hotline you can call and ask questions. There's a lot of people that want to see you be successful, and doing it yourself is a lot of work. It's not easy, but you'll learn a lot and you'll get better over time. So maybe do it for some of your smaller ideas and then work up to your favorites.
I think a good follow-up, when you write your own patent, is there a primer, a guide to follow to make sure you have all the parts necessary for a viable application?
Yeah, there's some. If you go on the USPTO website, there are some hard requirements, sections that you have to have in your patent, things that you just learn over time. Like, you can amend your disclosure and the background and the claims as you go, but one thing you can't do is add more figures. So submit a bunch of figures up front and then delete them as they're no longer necessary. Little tricks like that you learn along the way.
What patent are you proudest of, and how many of your pending patents do you expect to win approval?
All of them. Yeah, definitely the one I'm most proud about is that first one I told you all about, because it was the one that was me just being out there on my own and going out and doing it, right? It's all about just doing it. And that first idea, the fact that it was issued, was just icing on the cake, but that was the one that got me addicted and excited about inventing.
Can you talk about some of the other inventions you have? Are they all strictly code related? Is there anything you could hold in your hands?
Most of them are code related or around GPS, mobile devices. I have an invention that will automatically delete an app when you're not in the location anymore. Like if you were at a theme park and you don't normally need the Six Flags app, but you drive away from Six Flags, it'll automatically clear it off of your cell phone. So things like that, a lot of them are software related. Yeah. I have the only physical one I have, which is kind of fun. It's my second patent that I filed on my own outside of IBM. But with the kids, they're always playing in the kitchen. And I thought, the only container or area they're playing with is the Tupperware containers. So I thought, why don't we make Tupperwares more fun? So my other physical patent is a storage container with wheels on the lid. So the kids could take it and make it a car and flip it around and play with it on the floor.
Do you run into negative responses to your inventions? How do you handle it, and does that affect your creativity?
Yeah, of course. In life, there's always haters, right? I don't read the comments on all my internet posts. But my husband, for example, he's a PhD scientist, and they're more around publishing, not patenting. So there's that conflict at home sometimes. He's like, well, just put it out in the public space for everyone to use. But the patent system was created for that purpose of making things public. Patent's only good for 20 years, so it's not like it's forever. I believe that patenting is sharing of ideas, And with IBM, I mean, I believe we're a good company. We're not going to go after the little guys, the startups that are infringing on some of our inventions. We use a lot of them for defensive purposes. So when we get sued by somebody else saying that we're infringing on their patents, we say, oh, but you're infringing on all of these of ours. So it's more protection than anything else. And I believe it's for good.
I have a question that came in from Twitter. What are the long-term objectives of the IBM inventing department, and how many inventors are employed by IBM?
I mean, like I said, inventing is a hobby. There's no inventing job at IBM. So anyone can be an inventor. I don't know how many of the 400,000 plus IBMers are actually inventors, but it's a pretty easy to get going process. So I try to encourage everyone at IBM, whether they're a new hire or have been around for a while, to come up with patent ideas. We've been the leader for issued patents for the past 24 years, something like that. So we believe in innovation and inventing around getting those patents and the issues. But at the same time, there's a budget, so there's only so many patents that we file every year, and we want to make sure they're valuable patents. So there's different business units and different technologies that we want to have inventions around, and we're focusing on those ones. A lot of times someone will have a good idea, but it's not in line with those IBM business values, so we're not going to spend the money to get a patent. If I would have came forward with my Tupperware idea, no way. They're like, we don't do anything with Tupperware. So that one was pretty easy to get the disclaimer of title to do myself.
I need something to arrange my Tupperware cabinet. When you invent, are most of your inventions to solve a problem you see in your own life, or do you seek to improve someone else's?
Both, for sure. I'm inspired by my own problems because that's what I'm living with. But at the same time, when I see other people run into problems, like that example of the earthquakes in Japan, you can help to solve other people's problems as well through invention.
Are you a science fiction buff? Does this help you in your work?
I wish I had more time to read books and watch movies, but that's something I mean, the last book that I read that I absolutely loved was Ready Player One. I don't know if you guys have seen it or read it. They're going to turn it into a movie, but it was amazing. It was like this alternative universe of using VR, and they were talking about how no one left their houses anymore. They just had this virtual environment where they'd go to the virtual work. That was pretty cool to think about. It definitely inspired me to come up with some ideas related to that.
Can you describe how your academic experiences and training prepared or hindered your current invention environment? How are schools and colleges changing to foster invention?
Sure. Yeah, so I did a TED Talk. It was a TED at IBM event, and when I was telling my story, I told a story about when I was in second grade, how I had this teacher that asked us to come up with an idea, an invention, and then make a prototype. So my first invention ever was this umbrella that extended all the way to the ground. And I think, yeah, it was really cool. But I think that the teachers, when they can inspire creativity out of their kids at a young age, even though it has nothing to do with technology, but it's just stretching your mind a little bit and thinking in new spaces, and start thinking like an inventor early, then you can identify what could be patentable, and it comes easier over time. As far as my academic career, I mean, I went to Carnegie Mellon for my undergrad in computer science, and then my master's at UTE in technology commercialization. And of the two, I mean, I don't know, undergrad went by so fast. It was like the real-time experiences of having the job was the most important for me. And then UT getting a master's in technology commercialization was really helpful for inventing, because I started thinking about problems not so much in this is a great solution, but is it a valuable great solution? Is it something people would buy? Is there a market demand for it? And changing my mindset from being a technologist to thinking more on the business side has really been valuable for me.
Questioner writes, personally, I find the idea of my GPS knowing what I'm carrying with me in my car a bit unsettling. Do you take that factor into account, or do you get that kind of feedback from the patent approvers?
I mean, technology is coming whether you want it to or not. But a lot of it is opting in. So at IBM, you always have a right to say no to something. You can uninstall apps from your device. You can say you don't want to be tracked. There's all these things that you can do if you don't feel comfortable in a situation. I don't think that should be a reason to stop innovating in the space, because there are people that are comfortable and get an advantage out of knowing those kind of information.
Does IBM buy patents from outside sources, or is it all from within?
I don't know.
Okay. If you work as a team, how do you assign credit for the invention?
Yeah, so that's why I like to keep my brainstorming teams small. If you have 3 people, then you can tell pretty easily who contributed to the idea and who didn't. If you have too many people in the room, then it's really hard, because is the person that came up with the problem, are they an inventor? No. Even though it's a really cool problem and they help to bring it to everyone's attention, they're not coming up with that solution, the invention. So by keeping that group small, it's really helped to alleviate some of that pain of inventorship.
Can you talk about Watson?
Is that the end of the question?
Yep.
Open-ended. Yeah, so Watson at IBM, for me as a developer, is a set of APIs. It's all this access to data and information quickly that you might not have had before. So we've got APIs for tone and sentiment analysis.
Can you tell us what an API is?
Oh, sorry. Application Programming Interface. So when you're a developer, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? You don't have to come up with everything from scratch. Instead, you can leverage other people's existing technologies to build off of it. So when you call someone else's API or their endpoint, you're asking them to do the work. I just want to know what the weather is going to be today. I don't care how you're calculating it. I just want to know what the weather is. So those kind of things already exist in pockets of technologies, and you can ask them for solutions and then use it to leverage it to build new solutions. So with Watson, it is about making use of a lot of information and computing power that you normally wouldn't have access to as an individual. Being able to look through lots of data and uncover the insights around that data quickly is something Watson's really good at.
Is the inventing or innovation process conducive to producing companies such as Google or Facebook?
Of course, yeah. I feel like, that's what I want to do. I want to start my own company, and I'd love to do it based off of one of my own inventions, right? Because then you've got a competitive advantage, and if someone tries to do it, I can go after them.
Does IBM work with nonprofits with their new ideas that need expansion to the world?
Yes, although I'm not part of those business units that are. I know we work with a lot of universities as well. We donate, compute power and Watson APIs, or we always have competitions and what do they call it? Kind of like a brainstorming group where kids can start playing with the IBM technologies.
As a questioner again, as a psychologist concerned with the very issues you mentioned at the end of your talk, the importance of reconnecting with the natural world, especially for children, do you have ideas of how we might foster that? Or do you have ideas for inventions that foster those connections?
It's hard. So my children's book, the moral of the story is to look up from your devices, but at the same time, the book uses technology to explain technology. So I feel like it's up to the parents to to draw the line of how much technology is too much technology for their child. I mean, for my kids, I want them exposed early to a lot of different things to see what they like. Maybe they don't want to be a software engineer. Maybe they want to be a scientist or an artist, and that's okay too. But unless they're exposed to a little bit, they might not know what they enjoy doing. So it's a tough question.
Can you talk about how your parents did or did not nurture your curiosity and their influence on your work?
Yeah, my parents have always been very supportive. They've always let my sister and my brother and I kind of make our own mistakes. They've, like I said, they really did kind of force us into the backyard and say, go entertain yourselves. As far as what we wanted to do in our career choices, they let us make our own decisions. And that kind of parenting I look up to and I try to mimic in our children and how we're parenting. But at the same time, we do kind of hover still. But maybe it's because they're so young. I don't give them the freedom that they probably want, but someday.
Question from Twitter: will artificial intelligences be able to invent?
That's a hard one. I hope so. I think that would be really cool. But I don't know how far off that is from now.
What advice do you have for young women to inspire them to be creative and inventive? And I guess I would add, is that any different than the advice you would give to young men?
Yeah. For me, it's different because I work from home, so I've never really experienced any issues with being a female in a male-dominated fields. But when I do go to conferences, I'll notice that it's mostly men and not a lot of women. And I've been using it to my advantage. It's almost like everyone remembers who I am and my name because I stand out. I'm different from everybody else. I've gotten opportunities to do speaking engagements because they wanted a woman. And I try not to let that hurt my feelings. I use that as an opportunity for me to better myself. And I like to tell other young women and men to take those opportunities when they're given to you and prove yourself. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to prove yourself because people are always questioning, like, are they good enough? Or, is she good enough? Or did she just get here because she's the only female? That kind of thing. So it's a little tough, but at the same time, it's a challenge, and I love challenges. So I encourage young people to, just be themselves and do what they love and don't worry about what other people are saying. I like to mentor young men as well as young women because I feel like if young men can see a strong female that's doing well, then they'll respect their peers that are females as well. Yeah.
A related question, I think. What advice would you give to people who find themselves in less encouraging corporate environments than you seem to find yourself in with the support structures that exist at IBM?
Find a new job. I think that you need to feel supported. You need to feel like you are getting something out of your career because, you wake up every day and your career is a large part of what you do and who you are. It's important to love what you're doing. And if you aren't happy, get a new job, go somewhere else, or latch onto somebody that you admire at your company. Ask them for 15 minutes on their calendar, take them to lunch, get to know them, and they'll help you as well throughout your career.
Again, from Twitter, what is the difference, if any, between a good idea and an invention?
I wouldn't say every single invention is a good idea. And I wouldn't say every idea is an invention either. That's a hard one. It really comes down to the value of the idea, right? I have a lot of patents that I know are going into product because I put them into product. Like I went out and coded them, but a lot of them, they might never go anywhere. Like my Wi-Fi social network idea, I think that's an awesome idea and I hope someone implements it, but nobody has yet that I know of. So a lot of it comes back to the inventor, and the inventor has a responsibility to decide what you want to do and how you want to share that idea. So I try to vocalize a lot of my inventions that I really like and tell people about them in hopes that they will be picked up or built off of and come up with even more cool ideas.
This one is for the real tech people. And maybe a company secret for all I know. What is Watson's API syntax most similar to?
I mean, it's just a set of REST endpoints. So it's like a web URL that you type in and you get some JSON payload response. Is that nerdy enough answer?
Yeah, I didn't understand it, so yeah.
Yeah.
Something I will understand. Children come up with crazy inventions all the time. By the time we are adults, we filter them out. How can we get our kids to not stop inventing?
I know, I saw some crazy stat where as children get older, they stop asking as many questions. And that made me really sad. We have a 4-year-old, and he is always asking us questions. And the worst part is sometimes it's the same question right after you answer. It's like, how does this work? But how does this work? But how does this work? And it can get hard as a parent. It gets frustrating to constantly have to answer those questions. But at the same time, you want to encourage them to keep asking questions. And as you get older, don't feel embarrassed if you don't know the answers to everything. It's okay to raise your hand and ask questions. I think that would be the big thing to stay in that child mindset, is to keep asking questions.
How can inventions become a greater part of our educational system, or inventing?
Yeah. Like what my teacher did for me, just encouraging us to come up with a new idea. I mean, obviously the schools don't have the resources to actually turn an idea into a full-blown patent. Unless you have a parent that's a patent attorney, it's hard to do that. But just encouraging kids to think differently, and it's okay to come up with ideas, and it might be done before. Who knows if someone had already done my full-length umbrella before. But it didn't matter to me because it was my new idea, and it's all about having that confidence to know that you can push yourself and come up with things, and other people will be excited to share with you.
Questioner asks, how do I expand my grandson's love of Legos into inventions?
Yeah, my kids are just getting into Legos, so this is close to home. I know that there's a lot of like kits you can buy for Legos that allow them to, come to life and experiment with electronics a little bit more, like moving Legos, all sorts of those kind of kits. I mean, when I was a young kid, we didn't have the kits. We didn't have the step-by-step directions. You got like a box of Legos and said, here, go at it, go make something. And I kind of like doing that with my kids. I don't give them directions and just see what they come up with on their own, and they get really excited with whatever it is that they come up with, just because they'll be excited that you're excited with their invention.
We'll end with this one. I guess in about the 24 hours you've been at Chautauqua, is there anything you see that you'd like to invent?
Well, if I told you, you'd steal my invention ideas.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Lisa DeLuca.